I'm very excited for today's guest as we have Riggs Eckelberry back with us. He is the CEO of OriginClear. So Riggs, thanks for coming back with on the show today, man.
Jeremy, it's such a pleasure again. And yeah, it does take me back.
It's wild because you and I actually chatted before the pandemic even was the first time we did the interview. So I wanted to kind of highlight the interesting thing, because you sent me some notes beforehand, which I got a chance to go through. And one of the interesting things I was taking a look at, because I know we hear things being talked about in infrastructure spending. We're going to do, rails and bridges and all these different things. And, water's been and water treatment has been a problem for a long time. Like, we need to be spending more on it. We need to be doing things like that. But at the same time, we have this problem of money being spent into infrastructure and not a lot of it's even addressing water. So let's talk a little bit about that problem first. Like, how big is the global water problem? And, how little are we actually even doing about it?
Yes, well, there's all kinds of scary stats. 6,000 kids a day die from waterborne illnesses, et cetera. And actually 80% of illnesses in developing countries are due to water. So it's a big problem. We tend to think we're okay in the US, there's Flint, but otherwise we're fine. The truth is that the water you drink will not kill you immediately, but it's got a lot of toxins in it. And the problem is it's getting worse. We have not been investing in our water system since 1960.
Wow.
And it's catching up. Now the backlog of undone work on infrastructure is coming up to $100 billion a year.
Well, and I think part of the thing people don't consider is, you mentioned 1960, that's the last time a lot of pipes were laid. It's the last time a lot of technology was put in. So things corrode, things get worse, and it actually makes the water problem worse, if I'm correct.
Unquestionably, it only goes downhill from there. They actually have sensors on these pump stations to track that have been allowed to be 50 years old and falling apart. And they put sensors on them to tell them it gets to a certain leakage point beyond which they can't tolerate it. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a hole in a boat.
Well, and the problem too, as well, and once again, this was highlighted in some of my research, is we looked at the inflation numbers came out a couple weeks ago. And the consumer pricing index doesn't consider a lot of things like lumber and things that are actually skyrocketing. So the consumer pricing index is way off. So we're not allotting enough money to handling this problem, but the money we are allotting is worth a lot less. So, we kind of have this interesting quandary right now of what do we even do about the problem?
Right. So the federal government over the years has gone from, well over 60% contribution to our 150,000 plus city systems, all the way down to about 6%. And now there's a big bill being considered, not big enough because it's water, but $111 billion is in the Biden infrastructure plan. As you say, though, the problem is that prices are doubling and doubling again, and you can't do long-term. I mean, Argentina, which has a 50% inflation rate, does not have any major public works going on. You just can't keep up. You just can't keep adding more money fast enough to get it done. And these things just stall. And there you are.
It's interesting. I was talking to former Congressman Vernon Jones about this the other day. I find that a lot of times it's people in private business and, people in the private world that fix a lot of this stuff. And that's a lot of what you guys are doing at OriginClear. Is you actually created a new product line, a new business to handle this. So I guess, why is it up to private businesses then to do something about this? Why is it not up to the public works in this case to handle it?
Well, first of all, as a practical matter, you're going to start fixing public works. Like Miami-Dade has got 100,000+ septic tanks that have to be fixed. We start running sewage out to all of those, you'll tie up traffic for 20 years, destroy quality of life, and it's going to cost $8 billion. That's before inflation. So it's just pointless. Better for those homes to cut the cord and have their own self-sufficient system. And that's what businesses are doing. They're not waiting. First of all, water rates are skyrocketing, so it pays to do your own water treatment. You're a brewery, treat your own water, and now you don't get charged by the municipality for the treated water, and you can actually recycle, which America doesn't do. So this is a really beneficial thing to cut the cord. The technology and this special roll-in, roll-out technology is called modular water systems, which is an amazing guru joined us in 2018. Dan Early, and he's got a bunch of patents which we've licensed for a long time. Okay, so that's the technology. Water on demand is the way to pre-fund these water systems so that customers just sign on the dotted line and they start paying on the meter like they're accustomed to. And these units are good because if they stop paying, we take them back. Thank you.
So the thing I wanted to understand about this, and this is, I couldn't quite wrap my head around this, is when we're looking at water treatment, I guess, where does the water come from in this case? Is it water you've used in your own business that we're recycling and recleaning? Or have we, like, I guess, cut into the public line somewhere and we're bypassing water treatment? So like, how does this work and how does this system work in with that?
Okay, so the clean water has been delivered by the city.
Okay.
To the brewery. Let's say a craft brewery. Now you make the beer. You've got breweries put out a lot of organic effluent. It's a lot of water. It's not super dirty, but it's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so now you got a lot of it coming out, treat it, and now you can reuse it, for example, for wash downs. You don't have to use it for beer. Use it for steam cleaning, all that kind of stuff. You can use up to 50% of it again. And then, of course, when you finally get rid of it, the city considers it treated water, which you don't have to pay for. It's all good. So it's for that brewery, and there's famous case studies when Russian River Brewery up in Sonoma County did exactly this because Sonoma was just driving water rates way up. And they said, fine, we'll just do our own system. All good.
So that's really interesting then. So this is really your own wastewater that you're figuring out how you can reuse in your business. And then I guess you're paying per gallon, or how does that structure then work?
Correct. So the customer then pays on a service contract per gallon. We say per gallon, but it's more like, cubic meter or whatever. This in the industry is well known. It's called Design, Build, Own, Operate, DBO. It's been going for a long time, but only at the very high level. A company called Aqua Ventures, which was sold to Culligan for $1 billion, was doing exactly this, but it was doing it for islands. An entire island would get a desalination system on the meter. But now we're dropping down into these $250,000 to $2 million systems. It's too small for the big water companies to handle. And you've got to have that portability, which the modular systems allow. So we feel we're dropping into kind of a mega trend of everybody else finally doing it, and we're serving that. It's very exciting.
Well, and as well, you mentioned this being something that people pay for monthly, and the unit can be repossessed if it's not working out. And I think at the same time, that's also a big shift in the economy that you're hitting on as well, because the economy has become less about ownership and more about access, right? Like, okay, so I want to be able to use this, but I don't want to have to pay for all the maintenance and pay for all those other things. So it's also a big economic shift now at the same time too.
Transportation as a service is emerging. All these things are happening. This is simply water as a service. Now, the next complication, of course, is you've got a ton of small customers with tens of thousands of payments happening. And then we get to the efficiency of the payment stream, which is the next big topic.
So I guess then how does that fit into the payment stream? Because I know as well, like you've taken a look at, crypto technology and the NFT market out there as well, which I will say, I do want to get into the explanation of what that was, because I like to think I'm pretty hip, Riggs, but you actually helped me to really understand what this was by just breaking down the definition. So let's talk a little bit about what that is and how that whole crypto market fits in with this.
Correct. Fungible means you can swap it. So a dollar bill, you can swap them. They're equally good.
Sure.
Bitcoin is fungible. One Bitcoin is the same as another. You don't care.
Right.
But then you have what's called non-fungible, where you take that Bitcoin and you attach a little tag to it that says, this is unique. And you've just created a non-fungible token. Now, nobody does it with Bitcoin. They tend to do it with Ethereum type tokens. That's just a detail. But what you've done is you've taken something generic and you've made it unique. And this is called non-fungible tokens. And they did $2 billion worth of business in the first quarter. It's a booming marketplace. Yeah, baseball cards, a lot of trivial stuff, but they've started listing houses as NFTs that you literally would pay with crypto, and you can pay securely with crypto because it's that house and no other. That's the key.
So are you like investing in that thing then? Do you have ownership rights in the thing? So like how does that portion of it work?
Okay, so let's imagine now you've got payment streams going out to the investors, the contractors, partners, everybody's getting money. And I built a schematic of it once and it would look like a freaking Picasso.
Well, that's why I asked you for explanation, because I like to think I'm a smart guy and I'm like, I'm a little confused here. So let's chat about this.
So the payments are going out. The problem with the payments now, as we know, because we pay dividends all the time, is, oh, the ACH changed, or bad routing number, or the PayPal notice went to spam. It's just endless. And we have people working, and they're delivering $4.35 payments to people, and they're going through all this hassle. That's got to end. So what we do is we take the payment and package it in an NFT, and the NFT has what's called a smart contract. It knows who to pay when. And inside that NFT, as we envision it, is the entire future stream of payments for that one slice. Okay, think of that one slice being all the payments into the future. And that NFT now, I can swap it with you. Jeremy, how would you like this NFT? Yeah, I paid X amount for it, but it's got all this future revenue and built-in inflation in the contracts. So maybe it's worth 50 times as much as the original value. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know, but it's a lot, because these systems can last up to 50 years, right? Continuously in service. So this becomes think of it like a bond, right? It's got all this future payments built in and so forth. But the beauty of it is that no muss, no fuss. If I transfer it to you, OriginClear doesn't have to update the address. You just start receiving the payments in your wallet yourself. It's the wallet that matters. And that's the beauty of it. So there's a next layer of this, which is, guess what? People start transferring once you start swapping, you get what's called an organic marketplace, a self-building marketplace. And we're seeing that in NFTs a lot. So now this is a very early to be talking about it, but it's definitely feasible. Why is there no global water marketplace? Why is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange not trading water futures? Except very limited in California, because water is local. But when we
now water is global, based on what you're saying.
We abstract the and every gallon is attached to a payment. You see, 2018, I tried to launch a crypto and it didn't work. Why? I mean, we didn't have the underlying pay per gallon. Once you have the pay per gallon, now there's money attached to every single gallon. You've monetized the water, and then you can transfer it around. You've created a global marketplace, and that NFT ends up in Singapore. It doesn't matter. There's now trading worldwide in these water on demand, as we call it. And this NFT we call $H2O. It's the H2O coin. And we've now trademarked that. And it's a beautiful thing, because water needs more trading, it needs a market, right? Like everything does. And then here's the cool part. We plan to then take in coins to fund new water systems on a kind of a virtuous circle, and they get tokens funding more systems, which then push out tokens, which fund more systems. Could be fun and wild, but the important thing is we then start to solve on a self-sustaining basis the water problems in the world. How exciting is that?
By doing something like this, at the same time, you're also detaching yourself from the value of a single currency, and actually you're attaching yourself to the value of the product. Is that correct?
Correct. So whatever the cost of that water is and if inflated, right? And it's important that all those underlying contracts are inflation indexed, so that there's a natural adjustment. And then you just, I once read that the cost of a haircut in Paris has not changed since the French Revolution.
Really?
But the francs adjusted. The actual cost of cutting that hair never changed.
Yeah.
Right. So the actual cost of treating that water doesn't change, but now we free ourselves, as you say, and it can be any currency, whatever. And that's really the promise of cryptocurrency, which is it's a secure way to run a parallel economy, regardless of what wackos are trying to decide to do with our money, right?
It's quite interesting, because I think in actuality, and I think this is why, sometimes, banks and financiers and governments and things freak out a little bit, because this is detaching the economy, where it's putting it back in the control of the hands of the consumer and the business person and things like that. So I think it's quite interesting, because to me, it seems like it's a little injection of sanity, right? Because it gives you a little bit more control.
Well, personally, I feel that it's going to actually save us, because if we just had what's called fiat, which means, printed money.
Correct.
Then it would be out of control, and it would turn into another, Weimar with a wheelbarrow full of money for the bread.
Yeah, you're trying to go get it, and by the time you get there, the wheelbarrow isn't enough. You need a second wheelbarrow.
Ridiculous. Okay, so that's where it's going. But this is an opportunity to actually save it because you have a point of stability. And what will happen is it'll calm the dollar markets over time. It's actually, I think, beneficial because people will be able to continue to do business. People in Venezuela, they use crypto, right? To stay alive now. It's actually making Venezuela healthy again over time. So I think we got to look at it as something that is, yes, revolutionary, but in a positive way. It's a way to create exchange systems. They always come back to a currency in the end. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to go and buy your bread at the local store, and you're not going to use dollar H2O as your coin, right? So it's always going to go out to cash. But this is a way to preserve value. I think it's healthy.
I guess, do you see this when looking at the future of economics and where the economy is going? Do you see this being, not just with water, but with other utilities and things like that, and them also being traded for each other as well? Or is that something we don't quite have an idea on yet?
That's difficult to say because the problem is central utilities have their own funding system. It's called municipal bonds, and the big water companies service them. But here's what happens. As more and more businesses start treating their own water and agriculture and so forth, the load on the central system becomes less. You need less and less central. It's like back in the day, the mainframes are huge, and then we had PCs. Now mainframes are just as big as they need to be. They're still there, but they're not being overwhelmed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when you had to book time on a mainframe ahead of time on the time.
I still remember the America Online discs they used to send in the mail, which we actually used for target practice, by the way.
Right.
But like, that's how we used to get our internet. So I get it.
So all that central stuff is actually relieved by decentralization. Like, I like to say that in California, we'll never get the high-speed train because government's incompetent in general, but we will get the self-driving car because there's already freeways.
Yes.
Right.
And that's driven by technologists and people creating products. And that happens a lot faster than, I think it was Ronald Reagan that made the statement that the 10 most troubling words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But private business can actually fix things, like just like you're saying.
Yes. And then, government has its place, but it will naturally evolve to what its place is, which is to make sure we don't hurt each other generally. That's really its core reason. And, to take care of international relations and stuff like that. But we can operate commerce and do good things. At the end of the day, water is in a terrible place. The Ogallala Aquifer, which is the Midwest, is running dry. And once it runs dry, it will take 6,000 years to replenish itself.
So rather than just burning it out, we need to continue using the water we're using. Like, I think that's a really great point, because to a certain extent, there's always going to be more water in the world, but clean water is very finite because we can only clean so much of it.
Exactly. And the people wanting desalination is great, but that's very energy intensive. That's a whole other issue. It's kind of like people wanting to defeat global warming by sort of dimming the sun. Well, it doesn't deal with the problem, right? It just dims the sun. Right. You still got a dirty atmosphere. So bottom line is, I'm really excited about it. We feel that this is that the deck that I sent you, the one that's on our homepage now, OriginClear.com, it is what we could do when we grew up, because we've spent years trying to figure out how to disrupt the water industry. And we've now, over the whole COVID period, I think, figured out it's the funding. Fix the funding, everything else happens. And secondly, you can do it with technology.
Absolutely. Well, Riggs, I've really enjoyed this conversation. As I said, I'm really excited about, the direction you're going with things.
We're very excited about this, and we can't wait for people to jump in and participate.
Very cool. Riggs, thank you so much for coming back on the show today.
Always a pleasure, Jeremy. Thank you.